Hi guys! Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, then hi, my name's Hannah, and today I'm going to be telling you all about the political officers in the Roman Republic. Just before we get into the video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit the subscribe button. It honestly makes my day every time that number goes up, and yeah, I would just be really thankful. Okay, so just in case anybody's a little bit unsure with the Roman timeline, it's okay, sometimes I get confused too. The Roman Republic ranges from 509 BC with the fall of the Roman kings to 31 BC with the Battle of Actium, which is when Augustus goes on to become the first Roman emperor. So in the Roman Republic, there are a bunch of different political offices that you can hold, but these depend on a few things, such as your age, what previous roles you've held, and your class. There was also this thing called the cursus honorum, and you can think about it like a political career path. You would start at the beginning of your career with a very small role with not much responsibility but with a younger age restriction, and over the course of your lifetime you would build up and up and up to get to the highest office you could achieve. There were also restrictions on how far you could go depending on the restrictions I just mentioned. Just a disclaimer here, I do not do Latin. I haven't done Latin since I was much younger, and if my pronunciations are wrong, please excuse me, I will just insert the word as well on the screen. So the first step in the cursus honorum is Queesta. Okay, so apparently I'm pronouncing that wrong already, so great start. Initially, there were only 2 of these, but then in 421 BC, this doubled to 4, and then in 267 BC, it became 8, and then with Sulla in 80 BC, there were 20. This is the position that you would have entered the Roman Senate. Originally, you had to be 30 years old, though by the late Republic, this had reduced to 20. The position was only held for 1 year, and there were a few responsibilities. You could be an assistant to a consul, you had to do financial admin, you had to supervise public games, and you could also be second command in a province. So a sort of alternative step 1 would be tribune of the plebs. Now this was a position only reserved to the plebeian class, the average Roman. There were initially only 2 of these, but by the late Republic there were 10. So this was a really important role in ancient Rome. They ensured that the plebeians were heard by the Roman Senate, who they were able to convene whenever they wanted to. They also had veto rights, and they could rule out any laws that went against the interest of the plebeians. Interestingly, they were never allowed more than 2 days travel from Rome, just in case there was ever any social uprising. Step number 2 in the cursus honorum. Now there were 4 aediles in total, 2 plebeian and 2 patrician. The plebeians had to have previously held tribune of the plebs, whilst the patricians had to have previously been Queesta. There was also an age restriction, you had to be 36 years old, and there were a bunch more responsibilities. These included being in charge of the water supply of the city, public games, the maintenance of public buildings, and the upkeep of temples. Basically, just a bunch of admin. Step 3, pretour. The number of these vary, and originally there were 6, but it ended up being about 8 to 9, it just depends. To become a pretour, you had to be at least 39 years old and have held the previous offices. So being a pretour was a huge deal. You had imperium, and this power was reflected by who you had around you. What do I mean by that? Well, when walking around public areas, they would have been escorted by 6 lictors carrying fasces, a symbol of your imperium. This role mainly had a judicial function. This meant that they could oversee trials, ensure the law was being enforced, and were kind of like an understudy to the consul. Now there's also a sort of bonus position here. If you had been praetor before, you could become a pro-praetor. Now this meant that you had even more power, and you would be able to hold legionary command and governorship. Step 4, consul. There were 2 consuls at any given time, and this was done to make sure that the power didn't go to one man's head. The position was only held for 1 year, and there were different age restrictions whether you were a plebeian or a patrician. So if you were plebeian, you had to be 42, whereas if you were a patrician, you could get away with being 40, which isn't very fair. They again had the power of veto in the Senate, and also had imperium, but this time, instead of being surrounded by 6 lictors, they were surrounded by 12, each carrying fasces to show off this imperium. Like I said, the Romans were very concerned about power going to one man's head, Rightly so if you know what's coming at the end of the Republic. So to prevent this, they made it the law that there had to be 10 years between consulships. Step 5, the final stage in the cursus honorum, censor. Again, there were 2 at any given time to make sure that the power didn't go to one person's head, and they only ruled for 18 months. This was a super important step, and they had big responsibilities. They were in charge of aqueducts and roads, and this gave them a huge amount of power because they could give lucrative contracts to private individuals and their friends. At least our government doesn't do that now. They also had to oversee public morality, and they had to perform the census. I know I just said that censor was the final stage of the cursus honorum, and I wasn't lying, but there was a sort of bonus stage if Rome was in crisis called dictator. So the role of dictator was only given out in emergencies, and they had a very small time period to hold that power. Now officially this was a 6-month limit, but we see later on people pushing it. Now this time limit was given because so much power was being given to one man who had absolute and total authority. This meant that he could ignore any of the other officers who had powers of veto, and his imperium would have been shown by being accompanied by 24 lictors, each carrying fasces. Like I said, the position was only meant to be held short term, but as we move into the 1st century BC with the arrival of Sulla, he is the first person to be granted the title of dictator for life. But that's a story for another video. Now these public offices did continue into the Roman Empire, but obviously there was a bit of a reshuffle with the introduction of an emperor, but I'm totally happy to go through these in a different video. And that is the end of the video. I hope you guys found it interesting. If you did, then please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys next week. Bye!